All right, welcome back. I am extraordinarily excited that these two wonderful women have taken the time out of their day to share with us on what's going on with people analytics. Is it a skill or is it a profession? I want to know. I want to know. So, hey, I'm going to just turn it over quickly in the interest of time. If you would, Anna and Beverly, introduce yourselves and about the topic, and I'll join you at the end and we'll have a Q&A. That sound good?
I'm Anna Tavis, Academic Director, Department Chair for Human Capital Management at New York University. And we are very much a startup entrepreneurs in the academic space to explore what this people analytics field is all about and how we contribute from the academic perspective. And Beverly is my colleague. Beverly?
Hi, everybody. Beverly Tarulli. I work with Anna at New York University. Just joined this year. I am a clinical assistant professor of human capital analytics and technology, formerly with PepsiCo most recently.
And so what we want to talk to you about is how do people get to this space? You know, if we go around interview everyone who is currently doing people analytics, and these functional areas are continuing to pop up in different organizations. I think COVID has accelerated that process. The question we get sitting in academia at this point in the master's degrees and professional studies, how do we get there? What are the pathways? What are the ways in which people can actually enter, and what would they best to enter be? So that's why we've started on that journey. And I want to bring Beverly in to give a little bit of her background and how she is coming in to help me build the curriculum and build this particular pathway.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Yeah, so I bring a recent practitioner perspective, having led the people analytics and human capital strategy function at PepsiCo for the last 5 or 6 years. And I think one of the challenges that I had, which is what made me interested in the academic side of things, is, you know, the skill set that you need for people analytics was not widespread within the HR function. And so finding people with the right set of skills to be on my team effectively was really a challenge. So, you know, what I ended up doing in some cases was pulling people from different disciplines outside of HR to really populate my team. So, you know, I reached out to different academic disciplines, you know, biology, chemistry. It was kind of crazy, but they were all very analytical people who could do the work and had an interest in the HR space. So I think from an educational perspective, you know, we kind of owe it to the profession to really build up this skill set. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
And I totally agree. I think your experience is pretty much shared among the practitioners in the field. If you go and interview the majority of CHROs or any HR function, the number one priority for them will be how to move their organizations to be a lot more evidence-based and analytically savvy, as well as much more digitally and technology enabled. And so clearly we can steal and borrow people from other fields, but our own mission has become to create those unique pathways and to bring people in. Everything from designing what that curriculum needs to be to really even bringing people in the classrooms who those individuals will be, who are going to be setting the pace and defining what the body of knowledge and what is the taxonomy of skills that will be required to enable, you know, the next generation of people analytics professionals to come in. And then the big question also comes up as around the future of HR. You know, a lot of us here and in this conference talk about the future of work and then wonder what that HR profession will look like. And again, what is the body of knowledge and skill sets that the HR will need to be and how it will be shaped. So one of the classes, and that's where I want to go back to Beverly, because she's she's partnering with me to define that learning path to the profession. Is managing the analytics function. One of the classes we teach is managing the analytics function, and identifying what's actually involved in the analytics function and where does it sit within the function of HR. And Beverly, if you could share your personal experience and your views, since you are teaching this particular subject, managing the analytics function, what's involved in figuring out what's right?
Yeah, it's funny. So I think people oftentimes they come into this program and into my class, very sort of focused on the technical pieces of analytics. And clearly there's that component. I think what they learn coming out of it is that equally as important, maybe even more important than, understanding, the models and everything else that we do in analytics is the pieces around it, right? So the translation of the business problems into an analytical problem, and then, working with the stakeholders at the back end to actually make something happen. And so, that's kind of a mind shift for them, I think, a little bit, especially if they've not done analytics or been familiar with it, in organizations before. So I think that's the messaging that I try to get across, that it's like, it's not just all about crunching numbers, right? Crunching numbers is part of it, but it's this broader, skill set really that is valuable, whether you're doing analytics or other types of internal projects in HR.
And it's a really great insight, Beverly, because what I am seeing now that we are in the second year of our program is two types of people coming to us. And I think it's important for everyone to know about it, because these are the people who are going to be shaping the HR profession going forward. And the two types are the actual HR professionals coming primarily from, let's say, compensation function. A lot of people from recruitment, talent acquisition, the functions that are, really outward looking and more analytically oriented by definition. But there's a significant group of people who are coming in from outside of HR who see this line of work in the analytics and technology space as their pathway to be working with people. And I find it fascinating to see people coming from finance, people with MBAs, people coming from project management and technology, especially technology implementation areas. And they're coming to us to learn about HR. So we're kind of in the process of blending those two streams of professionals coming together and figuring out what that magic balance is going to be to actually mint the professionals that do not have to be, one or the other, kind of the well-balanced, holistic view of people, of the personas in our space. And Beverly, I would welcome you to share your views.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, I was thinking, I have people in my classes who have engineering degrees, so they're, they started out their careers and they somehow got interested in HR, or they're newly interested in HR, so they want to make that transition. I've even seen, the generalists, right? So people who are HR generalists who, see the light, basically, that, the working with data, being more evidence-based is kind of the way to go. And whether they want to go, ultimately to become, people analytics professionals, or they just want to take that skill set back and be better, HR generalists and HR business partners, I think we see a little bit of both. So there's no one profile, I think, that comes to a program like that we have. It's in which, by the way, makes it somewhat challenging to teach it, because you have some people who are very technical and you have to, kind of satisfy them. Other people who are not as technical, and that's a big challenge. But it's fun, and I think it sort of speaks to the broad appeal of people analytics in HR. That we have all these different people coming from different places.
One of the things that we also are paying attention to really closely is the market. And where do our students go? Again, we only have 1 year and we're into the second year of this program, and see what kind of recruitment patterns and jobs are we seeing out on the other side of it. And what I'm finding, and I'll be really interested if anyone in the audience or yourself, Beverly, have seen this happening, but I am not seeing that the market really knows what they want. Oftentimes these, and we've tracked these through various tools and technologies, we track those job descriptions that companies are putting out there looking for people to step into those roles. And there's, again, very, very broad, a range of what they think required technical skills. And I think a huge undervaluing of the domain expertise and understanding of the functioning of HR. What I'm seeing in the market is, a lot of people are looking for, again, engineers to step into the HR space. And I think that that's something that eventually will need to be corrected.
Yeah.
What is your experience of that?
I think that reflects two things, Anna, and this might be a little bit critical of HR, but I think my experience has been HR is notoriously not so great at writing good job descriptions. In other words, it's kind of like, we want everything, right? So, they just throw out, everything in the world and hope something sticks. But I also think it's partly a reflection of the broad definition of people analytics, right? So there's still organizations out there that think people analytics is reporting primarily, right? Which is, and then you get the very sophisticated, companies that are out there looking for, people who could do machine learning and other types of more advanced techniques. So I think we see that variety because of historically the nature of how we write job descriptions, but also just how we define people analytics within different companies.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting place where we're at right now from the point of view of really skilling people up and preparing those pathways into the people analytics function. And what I specifically want to point out is that there's been kind of an emergence of a whole broad range of providers of skills training, specific to different tools, especially lots of tools training around, that are being implemented in people analytics functions, and there are some, we know Google and other technology companies are specifically training for skills on tools in different areas of HR. And I think that what I hope is that our program helps to bring all of it together. And this is where I feel there is a need for us to join ranks and think about, again, what is the body of knowledge? How do we transition from just an upskilling of a certain number of people in HR to really defining a profession that is a discipline that actually can cut across not only and work not only in HR, but in many areas of where people work, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be in HR. And that's where I see a lot of opportunity for us to look across and see how marketing solves for this, how my favorite area of inspiration is sports. But I think there's still a lot of opportunity for us to define that space. What will be your take, Beverly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, it's kind of an exciting place to be in a lot of regards, because, before I joined, just to share a little story, before I joined NYU, and, this, Anna, but, I did a little research, right? So I went to see, like, well, what is the competition for the program at NYU, right? And what I found, at least in the US, was that there aren't a lot of comparable programs. So there are a lot of programs out there that are focused on, business analytics, for example, but nothing is really specific to people analytics. So there's not a lot out there. So I think we're still in that front end of defining, to your point, what should these programs look like? What are those skill sets that the employers are demanding? And I think, just we're still in that learning phase. But, I think it is something that we'll figure out pretty quickly just by looking at, to your point, what the market is looking for, talking to these employers, particularly, heads of HR that are looking for, to build these teams out.
Great. And I think that, one of the missions for ourselves is also to help the market define itself, right? To help the market understand, bringing our skills and our ability for, design learning to, curate content, et cetera, to really step into that role and be in these types of conversations with the professionals who are out there pushing the knowledge, expertise, and the practice further. And I think where I actually also look into and stay connected to very closely is the ecosystem and these types of communities. Al, David Green, our own New York-based strategic people analytics meetup. I'm seeing a lot of sort of grassroots efforts and various communities emerging outside of the traditional institutions that are out there. But at some point, as I said, and we could be the first pioneer in that space, there is an opportunity to, build institutions, build a more defined pathways, and allow people a clear pathway into, those opportunities on the job side of the journey. Any thoughts on that around the ecosystem and our role in that?
Yeah, no, I think we do. So it's, you mentioned partnerships, which I think is going to be important. Working and I think part of it's just an awareness, right? So, I think traditionally, at least, if you think about the last 10 years in people analytics, right, because it just sort of popped up as a thing, we really haven't thought about, well, how do you train people to do it, right? And we haven't had a degree, if you will, right, that sort of said, well, here's an easy way to do it, right? And now you're starting to see this kind of confusing market almost, right? So you have, to your point on, you have companies who are creating training. You have, certificates that pop up through a variety of associations, organizations, consulting firms. You have educational institutions. So I think it's kind of confusing for the consumer to some degree, right? So I think, part of our opportunity here is to really help to define, what do you get in each case? In some cases, you're getting narrow kinds of focuses, right, around the technical pieces, and I think our niche is kind of both, right? Like we're sort of defining this, technical plus the consulting plus the, kind of business orientation, right? Because we have practitioners who happen to have PhDs teaching in the program. So I think there is this kind of loose ecosystem now that we have to try and kind of figure out, and it'll rationalize, I think, over time.
Yeah, I think it's a really good description of what's going on. It's right, a little bit of the Wild West of training right now in that field. And I think what I'm also seeing, a lot of organizations are feeling a little bit that they're on their own. They're trying to figure out who they're going to bring. They know what the outcomes they want to get. And oftentimes they don't even know, because what we're seeing with some of our first graduates coming out, that they often come into, and we're going to talk to our students next, but into kind of these hybrid roles where, analytics is not really identified, again, because there's so much leaning into the reporting, and the majority of businesses is not really defined as a discipline. So a lot of our students, given also their pretty eclectic backgrounds, are stepping in, but then they're taking the charge and defining and establishing much more specific functions in the organizations they joined. So I am very excited to see how we are going to, continue to grow the profession, to continue to grow the awareness, and really create the talent pipeline, which we see our mission to be, and help this area of broad area of people analytics evolve and be recognized for what it is, in the broader context of the organization. And Beverly, I want to, to kind of tap into your expertise, experience, and knowledge around where you see our role is in, in this ecosystem.
Well, I mean, I kind of see us producing a product, if you will. I use people as products, but but that's what our product is, right? We're producing people with a knowledge base that is going to accelerate this agenda within HR, right? So another little story. I was talking to someone yesterday, and this is somebody who had actually created a people analytics firm a while back. And has most recently become more of an investor in other technology companies. And he said something to me, which I thought was really sort of enlightening. I just kind of, a little light bulb went off in my head. And he said, it's really interesting working with different functions in businesses as opposed to HR, except because they seem to have money. So I thought it was a really insightful thing. I thought, I think we have to. I think it's time for companies to kind of step up and invest in this place, right? Because and whether that's, people, right, the staff to build up the people analytics functions. I mean, we've gotten better over the years. If you look at some of the like LinkedIn surveys and that sort of thing about, how companies are looking at people analytics and how they're embracing it. But, for me, it's sort of this supply and demand thing, right? Like we're creating the supply, right, by producing really good students who can go out and actually like do the work right out of the blocks, right? It's not a theoretical perspective that we provide them. But on the other hand, we need these companies to really kind of say, yeah, this is really important and put the money, behind it, I think. And I don't know how those two things come together. I don't know where our role. I'd be interested on actually if you have any thoughts about how do we help to create the demand, if you will.
Yeah. And this will be our final exchange here, Beverly, but I do think that the kind of the silver lining to the COVID situation we are in will be some of the reevaluation around where the place of data and specifically people data, and I think the rise and expansion of employee experience approach vis-a-vis just the high potential focus where HR has been for the last 20 plus years. I think with COVID, what we've seen, and again, looking at specific company examples, that these teams were absolutely instrumental, literally the people analytics teams, literally in the war rooms of these companies, providing, yes, at this point, reports, but also important information for their business leaders to make decisions around what's going on the ground with their people. Who is exposed, who are the essential workers, where, especially in multinational companies, where around the world were the hot spots where they needed to protect their employees. And, all of a sudden, instead of just looking exclusively at the business landscape and going to business analytics, the attention was drawn immediately to what's going on with our people. Do we know where our people are? How do we take the temperature around, the risk factors associated with certain populations of our employees being in these hot areas of the virus? I think that has created really, first of all, pivoted to the internal focus and understanding the importance and the value of employees, but also tremendous needs on the part of the business leaders to be aware and to have knowledge, of what's going on with their employees. And now, as I think companies are going to start thinking about, even the vaccine distribution, right? And then you look at return to the office. Some of the most immediate issues that the companies are going to be looking at in the context of the pandemic for the first time in, at least in economic history, since we started measuring it, is going to be internal. Who is going to stay in, who is going to be remote, how is it going to affect productivity? All of a sudden, the center of gravity has moved on to internal employee population, and the ability to measure, the ability to get data just in time, the ability to make decisions and be predictive around, how things are going to move, I think is absolutely critical. And that's where I see the opportunity for our people functions to actually step in and provide those data, and also be at the table when significant business decisions are going to be made going forward. And I see a tremendous opportunity there. What do you think?
No, that's a great point. I mean, if you look back, it seems like ages ago, right? But in March and April, when these people analytics teams just jumped in and started creating these tools that allowed their companies to really track their people and where COVID was. I mean, I just hope we don't lose that opportunity as, practitioners, right? To really just kind of push the agenda, right? Because it's kind of like it's there for the taking, and we just need to sort of grab it.
Exactly. All right. I see Al joining us again.
I just pop out of nowhere. Hey, thank you so much. I mean, as I'm taking notes here, I'm going, yes, yes, yes. So just don't be surprised when you see a post and/or article come your way on this topic, because you're absolutely spot on, right? We do have a profession that has clearly emerged. That being said, we also have a bunch of stakeholders and internal customers that need to be more adept at consuming this information and facilitating change downstream. So I'm so happy that you've created this program, and that I hope you get hundreds, if not thousands, of people going through it over the coming years. How can people learn more about your program and what you're doing?
First of all, you can always reach out and connect with Beverly and myself. And we have a website. If you go to NYU Human Capital Analytics and Technology program link, and we show up, Al, at your meetings. We are everywhere. We are still very, active members of the broader global people analytics community. So you're going to bump into us because we're in it together. And
yes,
thanks so much for doing what you're doing.
Yes, we are. Well, thank you both. Thanks for being your awesome selves, and look forward to chatting again soon. So thank you.